Welcome to Session 2 of Module 1. This session dives into the evolution of how disabilities have been perceived, moving through various historical models. Disabilities were long seen through a lens of charity or as a purely medical issue, with significant shifts over time as societal perspectives evolved. The key learning outcomes of this session include understanding the evolution of disability studies, exploring different models of disability, analyzing disability as a social and political issues, examining influential theories and thinkers, and exploring intersectionality in disability studies. The idea of disability as a political issue introduces the political dimensions of disability with a focus on ethical concerns like the do not resuscitate orders. This highlights how social values can influence life and death decisions and how disabled individuals are often viewed through a medicalized lens rather than as equal members of our society. In the volume Thelathons, various models of disability are explored, showing the progression from older views such as the religious charity model, where care was provided through organizations like the Ladies of Charity, to the medical models which dominated over 200 years. The social model then emerged, highlighting how societal barriers are the primary cause of disability, not individual impairments. The American-British version of the social model, along with other perspectives, are discussed in this volume. David Pfeiffer's published in 2002 an article titled Disability Studies in the Disability Studies Quarterly Journal. His analysis outlines various versions of disability studies, from the American social constructionist model to the postmodern, post-structuralist, and experiential perspectives. Each version presents a different way of understanding disability, either as a social construct, a form of oppression, or as an expression of human diversity. Paul Hunt, Vic Finkelstein, and Michael Oliver contributed to the English social model of disability, which argues that disability is imposed by societal barriers. This model emphasized that the problem lies not with the individual's impairment, but with the way society is organized to exclude disabled people. So Hunt, Finkelstein, and Oliver, in their volume Fundamental Principles of Disability, declare, from our point of view, it is society that disables people with physical impairments. Disability is something that is imposed on us through the way we are unnecessarily isolated and excluded from full participation in social life. Disabled people are therefore an oppressed social group. In another volume, The Politics of Disablement, Michael Oliver critiques the medical model which treats disabilities as an individual tragedy. He introduces the social theory of disability as a form of social oppression. His work connects disability to economic and social structures, particularly the way labor and production systems marginalize disabled individuals. For Oliver, disability arises as a different correlate of the able-bodied person's claim to wage, labor, and production. The inaptitude for work poses the problematic nature and the need for a peculiar and differentiated management of disabled people. In short, Michael Oliver declares, the disabled individual is an ideological construction linked to the organic ideology of individualism and the arbitrary ideologies linked to medicalization and normality. And the individual experience of disability is structured by the discursive practices that proceed from these ideologies. Colin Burns, Len Barton, Tom Shakespeare, and Dan Goodley advanced the sociology of disability within the English social model. Their work evolved to include more complex analysis of how disabled identities are structured and how new social movements are shaping disability policies. Shakespeare, in particular, addresses limitations of the traditional social model and highlights the need for a more nuanced understanding of disability. In the American context, the work of Erving Goffman, particularly his book on stigma, plays a central role. Goffman's theory of symbolic interactionism is used to explain how societal views of disability as a spoiled identity impact disabled people. His analysis of stigma includes physical disabilities, mental health, and social marginalization based on other factors such as ethnicity or religion. Goffman categorizes stigma into physical deformities, character flaws, and tribal stigma based on race, religion, or nationality. This author emphasizes how stigma affects the social interaction and identities of disabled people, contributing to their marginalization. Disability studies have expanded globally and became integrated with other disciplines such as sociology, anthropology, psychoanalysis, and literary criticism. This has led to a hybridization of theoretical perspectives, including intersectionality and critique from women, queer, and black studies. Robert Murphy's work, The Body Silent, is an example of how anthropology contributes to disability studies by exploring the lived experiences of disabled individuals and how different cultures view and manage disability. Some authors have reflected about how disabilities have been understood differently across culture. For example, Grinker cross-cultural analysis of autism in the United States, South Africa, and South Korea, among other places, reveals how autism is framed by the cultural and institutional settings. The growing recognition of autism as a spectrum and the historical shift away from the older psychiatric models of mental retardation to newer frameworks focused on education and intervention are key trends in this area. The book presents a thesis aiming to challenge the discourse on the so-called autism epidemic, which some attribute to an increase in diagnosis. Grinker offers 7 arguments to explain this proliferation. First, professionals have become more adept at identify autism-specific traits. Second, early diagnosis is now possible. Third, the distinction between autism and schizophrenia has reduced childhood psychosis cases. Fourth, the spectrum concept has expanded the scope for autism diagnosis with broader criteria than those defined by Kanner and Asperger. Continuing the list. Fifth, the term mental retardation has been redefined, with autism being a less stigmatizing alternative. 6. More cases are identified due to improved and more sensitive epidemiological methods. And 7. Genetic or developmental pathologies like Fragile X are now classified under autism due to the DSM symptom-based approach. Another important book is The Autism Matrix by Jill Isle. Isle's work on the deinstitutionalization of mental retardation shows how the closing of large institutions in the 60s and 70s led to a greater focus on community-based care and education for children with developmental disabilities. This shift has also led to the emergence of the autism diagnosis as we understand it today. The moral and practical shift from custodial care to community integration changed how society addresses disability. IL emphasizes that this process not only reshaped institutions, but also led to a broader understanding of atypical children, including those with the autism spectrum. The shift from psychiatric institutions to the educational interventions for autism marked a major turning point in how society views and treats children with developmental disorders. Parents played a key role in demanding better services and advocating for their children's needs, as this book, Life as We Know It, demonstrates. Maya Holmer Nadesan, the mother of an autistic boy and an academic, authored the influential volume Constructing Autism, which examines the origin of modern autism discourse. Her work shows how historical, cultural, and epistemological factors shape the way autism is understood, particularly as a form of relational nonconformity in childhood. Patrick McDonagh's research explores how the diagnosis of idiocy in the 19th century relates to modern understandings of autism. He draws connection between literary movements like modernism and psychiatric diagnosis, showing how cultural contexts shape our understanding of mental health. Other authors like Julia Miele Rodas highlight the potential of linking autism studies with literary analysis. This emerging research area explores how autism is represented in literature and how these representations influence both public perception and the lived experiences of autistic individuals. Jan Acking's concept of the looping effect shows how the stories we tell about autism shape both societal understanding and the experiences of autistic people. These narratives influence public perception and the self-identity of those diagnosed with autism. Autistic individuals are often depicted in literature as either geniuses or individuals with profound communication difficulties. These representations can either reinforce stereotypes or challenge societal assumptions about autism. Thank you for your attention.